The movie Transcendence seems to be one of the latest in a very large wave of transhuman propaganda. Now, transhumanism, it's a somewhat of a broad term which covers everything from human enhancements, up and downloading information, either downloading contents of one's brain into a computer or uploading the contents of a computer into our brains. Also deals with human-robot interactions, etc. So, this movie seems to be about becoming super intelligent and therefore becoming post-human, transhuman, more human than human. And what happens when you do that to yourself and you can no longer function as a human being? You know, you become the Ubermensch, the Superman, beyond good and evil, the Nietzschean concepts. Of course, previous to this, we even just recently have had two new TV shows, Intelligence and Almost Human, both playing on this theme of transhumanism. Certainly played a part in the Matrix with the uploading of information and living in a virtual world. Also played a part in L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth with a device whereby you could upload tremendous amounts of information for instant knowledge. And certainly played a huge role in Star Trek with the Borg. And of course, Gene Roddenberry had some interesting interactions into the realm of paranormal research. And this also calls to mind the movie The Lawnmower Man, wherein a man who, how shall we say, he was differently advantaged. He had some sort of mental disability. Is hooked up to a computer and made super intelligent. And again, to the point where he loses contact with reality because he is living in his own reality. In his own world, he becomes a god. And something odd about that movie, during moments of the movie where he's experiencing these huge uploads of information and breaking into the virtual world, all sorts of sigils are displayed. Magical sigils. I mean, what does that have to do with anything? All kinds of magical sigils. And in fact, there's a scene that depicts the crucifixion right there in virtual reality. What does that have to do with anything pertaining to the mere interaction of humans and up and downloading information? Well, if we go further back still to, I believe it was 1920, we encounter a black and white movie called Metropolis, a silent film. Well, in Metropolis, there's a scientist who built a robot into which he can download the contents of a person's brain. And then he makes the robot look like a human being. So basically it's a replacement. It's almost like a clone, a robotic clone. But what's interesting is that one point in the movie, this robot is sitting upon a chair, you know, some kind of a throne really. And behind it is what? But a very large upside down pentagram. Now, first of all, you have the downloading of a human mind into a robot in 1920. And what on earth does a satanic pentagram have to do with it? Or think back to Frankenstein. The story about various body parts being combined into a dead mass of previously existing beings and brought to life scientifically through the use of electricity, etc. Basically brings the being to life that basically has to be trained from the ground up. I mean, it's like a newborn baby. It knows nothing. It has to be trained or programmed by its creator. Keeping in mind, of course, that Frankenstein is the name of the doctor. Morning.
Have a good one.
You too, thanks.
They do to you.
Well, it seems to me that if we go even further back, okay, we are going back into the realm of Jewish mysticism, into the Kabbalah. And now I'm going to take a time to explain something, which is that religions have a way of embellishing, right? So various groups come along and say, right, we have the written text, yes, that's fine. But we also have, okay, so we have the Holy Book plus our own little spin on things, and that makes it special, okay? So, for instance, the Roman Catholics did this by saying, yes, we have the written Bible, but we also have the oral teachings of the apostles, and of course we also have the sayings of the various saints, the sayings of the various apparitions, the sayings of the various popes. Islam did this as well. Yes, we have the written Quran, yes, but we also have the Hadith, and these are hundreds and hundreds of collections of the doings and the sayings of Muhammad. And likewise, Rabbinic Judaism did this as well. They said, yes, we have the written Torah, or the Tanakh. Okay, that's their word for what many call the Old Testament. Tanakh is an acrostic for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketubim. So the law, the prophets, and the writings. And yes, we have the written Torah, the written Tanakh. But, or so the claim goes, when Moses was upon Sinai, God did reveal to him laws which he was meant to write down, and that's the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. But, you see, God also revealed to Moses laws which he was not supposed to write down, but he was only supposed to pass on orally. And that's the Rabbinic Judaism's oral tradition, that's the Mishnah. So down through time, commentary was made upon the Mishnah, and that's the Gemara. So finally, around 500-600 AD, the Mishnah and the Gemara were compiled and written down, and that's what's known as the Talmud. And there's actually 2 Talmuds. There's the Jerusalem Talmud, or the Talmud Yerushalmi, and then there's the Babylonian Talmud, or the Talmud Bavli. The Babylonian Talmud definitely being the most voluminous and the more authoritative one. So now, even later on, the Kabbalists came along and claimed that, well, yes, when Moses was on Sinai, not only did he receive did he receive laws he was to write down, and laws which he was not supposed to write down, but passed down orally, he also received mystical teachings, which he was supposed to pass down orally, and which eventually came to be written down in various Kabbalistic texts, such as the Zohar. Now, Kabbalah, it's been called everything from mysticism to Jewish magic to logic to everything in between. And actually, it forms the backbone of just about every secret society and magical group you could think of, from Aleister Crowley's Thelema, or Crowleyanity, to speculative Freemasonry, and all in between. Now, within the Kabbalah, you have the concept of the golem, which I imagine is where Gollum comes from in The Lord of the Rings, and Golem the Insatiable, the new cartoon show. Golem is, well, through many, many, many years of training, it is claimed that a rabbi could form a basic humanoid shape out of dirt, and by a certain invocation and by writing a certain name on its forehead, it could bring it to life. So the rabbi had the power to create life just as God. You will be as gods. Generally, the word inscribed upon the forehead was one of the Jewish names for God, which is spelled with an aleph, mem, and tav, and it's pronounced Emet. Emet, same as the first name of the main character in the new Lego movie. Well, Emet means truth, and it's spelled with the very first, the very middle, and the very last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And so this would bring the golem to life. And then when the rabbi was done using the golem, he would simply rub out the first letter, and it would just crumble back into dirt, into dust. So rubbing off that first letter would leave the word met, which means death, which is interesting because you see those signs against methamphetamines which say meth is death, and in a way it's very true. Depending on the pronunciation, met is death. Now, the golem was essentially just a very basic form of a computer because it had no volition of its own. It had no will. It would literally just do whatever the rabbi told it. It was, as they say, garbage in, garbage out. And it would just follow instructions. That's all it did. And so the rabbi had to be very specific with the instructions. For instance, there's a story of a rabbi who sent his golem to go fishing. Well, the rabbi's waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and the golem doesn't return. So finally he sends somebody to go get the golem and tell him to come home. And the golem stands up, gets the basket full of fish, throws it in the river, and heads back home. You see, he wasn't told to stand up, get the basket of fish, and bring it home with you. He was merely told to come back home, so he threw the fish away. So I guess essentially Golem is a teenager. I went to a friend's house and he walked into the bathroom and he says, "Come here, look at this." There was a roll of toilet paper sitting on the bathroom sink. And he says, "I told my son to bring down toilet paper and he just put it here on the sink." And I said, whoa, hold on. You didn't say take out the old roll, put the new one in, and attach it to the wall. You didn't say that. You told him to bring some toilet paper down from upstairs, and he did it. So basically, what we see is a very long history of men trying to be as God, to create life in one form or another, to some extent or another. What we're seeing in transhumanism is just a very modern, up-to-date, highly technological form of the golem. And so down through the years, we have all these stories of man playing God, of man seeking desperately to take that final leap into becoming a creator, into becoming a supreme being. And if you listen to real magicians of all sorts, from the likes of Aleister Crowley even to the actor Will Smith, who refers to himself as a mystic and claims that when he sets his will towards a certain goal, the universe literally bends to his will, to the point where he claims that if he doesn't want 2 + 2 to equal 4, then it's not going to. Not in his world, not in his own creation.
I don't want to be an icon. I want to be an idea. You know, I want to represent an idea. I want to represent possibilities. I want to represent magic, right? That you're in a universe and 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 only equals 4 if you accept that 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 is going to be what I want it to be. You know, and there's a redemptive power that making a choice has, you know, rather than feeling like you're at effect to all the things that are happening. Make a choice. Like, you just decide what it's going to be, who you're going to be, how you're going to do it. Just decide. And then from that point, the universe is going to get out your way. It's like it's water. It wants to move and go around stuff, you know. So for me, I want to represent possibilities. I want to represent the idea that you really can make what you want. One of my favorite books is The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho, and I just believe that. I believe that I can create whatever I want to create. If I can put my head on it right, study it, learn the patterns, and you know, it's hard to put into words, some real metaphysical, esoteric nonsense, but I feel very strongly that we are who we choose to be.
First of all, it's not mumbo jumbo. It makes sense, number one. Number two, I think sales of The Alchemist just went up.
Well,
whatever that book is, the sales just went up on Amazon.com right about now. When that happens, I'm going to call you and say, well, I wouldn't mind. It really went up.
No, it's great.
No,
it's a quick read, too.
Yeah. If you can spell alchemist. That's a good Scrabble word, alchemist.
No, but The Alchemist, right, because it's great. Like, what I consider myself an alchemist. An alchemist is basically a mystical chemist, right? And one of the great feats that alchemists used to do is they would take lead, just take a chunk of lead, and they could turn lead into gold, right? So the symbolism.
Sounds like a good hustle.
I know, right?
When I leave here, give me some lead.
Exactly. You know, but I'm so connected to symbolically being able to turn lead into gold. You know, my grandmother used to say, you know, life give you a lemon, you go ahead and make lemonade.
Absolutely.
To me, that's alchemy. That's the same concept behind the alchemist.
I'm with you on the alchemy part.
So from the concept of a golem all the way up to the concept of transcendence, transcending humanity, we see a thread of occultism, of mysticism, of magic, of manipulating reality, of seeking the ultimate goal to be as God. And don't dismiss how appealing this is. I mean, to some extent, we already live in a world of human enhancements with artificial hips and hearts, with metallic tooth fillings, with everything in between. And at this point, it would seem that the next big step will be nanotechnology. I mean, letting nanobots into your body, that seems like a big step, because after all, just like all the computer programs you use and how people have access to them and keep records of them, how do you know what's actually in the nanobot? What it's actually programmed to do? Who can hack into it? I mean, we don't really know what's in nanobots. For that matter, we don't really know what's in hot dogs.
Rump roast? Hot dogs. Hot dogs. Hot dogs. Hot dogs.
So if things go the way that these technocrats want it to go, the end result will be that the elite will auto-deify. They will make themselves gods. And then the rest of us will just be their programmed slaves. They'll literally be able to program us, reprogram us, deprogram us. That's the scenario to which they're aiming.
There's more computing capacity in a grain of sand that's been nanoteched, right? There's more computing capacity in that grain of sand than our human being brain's capacity by a factor of, I don't know, billions, right? So imagine a young woman, she's just given birth, and then she needs to make the decision. Is she going to have her baby modified? Is she going to turn that baby into a cyborg, or effectively an artellect? So say she decides to do that. So this, hypothetically, this grain of sand, in a sense, that's been nanoteched, is inserted into the human brain, that baby's brain, and it integrates itself into the brain. So that baby, in effect, is no longer human. Because, I mean, think about it. The capacity of that grain of sand is billions of times what the human brain can do. Right? So for, I don't know, 1/1000th of its capacity, of its time, is it doing human things. For the other 99.9999999% of the time, it's doing artellecty type things. So that woman, in a sense, has killed her baby. Killed in the sense the baby is no longer human. It's effectively an artellect. It's an artellect in human disguise.
When we start modifying our brains with technology, then it does change us from the word go. Even just feeding in one electrode with maybe an extra sense, an ultrasonic sense, which we know is quite possible, then it starts to give you abilities, and you believe you can do things outside the normal realms of humanity. So your values, your morals start to change immediately. You become a cyborg.
What I'm really interested in is to try to understand the bigger picture for humanity, our place in the world, and what might lie in store for our species in the future. Particularly the way we might use technologies to enhance ourselves, or to go beyond what we currently think of as our human nature, whether it might be by radically extending the human lifespan through solving the problem of aging, or increasing our intellectual capacities, improving our memory, or taking control of our own emotional states. I think that we are right now in a transitional phase where before the end of this century we will either have gone extinct, or we will have most likely taken the step to become what you might call transhumans or posthumans, or just very enhanced humans that have reached their full potential.
Because progress is so rapid, I mean, there's going to be more progress in the next 10 years than there were in the previous, I don't know, 20 or 30, right? So the rate of progress is speeding up. It itself is accelerating. So there's going to be hugely more change, technological change in the 21st century than in the 20th. Far more. So all these weird things that sound like science fiction to most people today will probably be realities in a time, in a fewer number of decades than we had imagined.
I can't see any way that it will not happen. This is progress.
Human beings already, theorists, have done the math. They've got the modelling of how to build baby universes. So if that's possible in theory, with human brains doing the thinking, what could an artellect do? Could it actually build universes? Could it actually manipulate whatever exists to create new universes? Is that possible? Now, if it can do that, then by definition, it's a god, right? It's a creator. Can you sort of sense a kind of, almost like a religious awe, almost? We could build gods if we wanted to.
dogs.